January 2nd, 1492. A lone rider moves through the winter air outside the city of Granada. Behind him rises one of the most beautiful palaces on earth, the Alhambra. Red walls glowing beneath snow-covered mountains, gardens, fountains, towers. For nearly 8 centuries, Muslim rulers had controlled large parts of the Iberian Peninsula. Now it was over. The rider is Muhammad XII, known to history as Boabdil. The last Muslim ruler in Spain. He has just surrendered his kingdom. As he leaves the city for the final time, he reaches a mountain pass and turns around for one last look. Legend says he begins to cry. His mother sees the tears, and then she delivers one of the coldest lines in history. "Weep like a woman for what you couldn't defend as a man." Whether she actually said it or not almost doesn't matter, because the moment captures something larger. A civilization was ending. Another was being born. The fall of Granada wasn't simply the conquest of a city, it was the final chapter of one of the longest wars in human history. A conflict that lasted nearly 800 years. A struggle involving kings, caliphs, crusaders, mercenaries, assassinations, religious zealots, political betrayals, and some of the most dramatic battles medieval Europe ever witnessed. And the consequences would reshape the world. Because only months after Granada fell, Spain would fund a sailor named Christopher Columbus, and history would never be the same. This is the story of the Reconquista, the war that created Spain. Today, the Reconquista remains one of the most debated periods in history. Some see it as a heroic struggle for survival. Others see it as a brutal process of conquest and religious domination. But regardless of perspective, one thing is undeniable. Without the Reconquista, modern Spain would not exist. The Spanish language might not dominate half the Western Hemisphere. The Spanish Empire might never have emerged. The colonization of the Americas could have unfolded very differently. And Europe's balance of power might have changed forever. Yet, what's remarkable is how unlikely the entire story was. Because at the beginning, the Christian kingdoms of Iberia were finished. Or at least everyone thought they were. The old Visigothic kingdom had collapsed, its armies shattered, its rulers dead, its future erased. All that remained were a few desperate survivors hiding in the mountains. And somehow, those survivors would launch a comeback lasting almost 8 centuries, a comeback nobody saw coming. The year is 711. The Visigothic kingdom controls most of Iberia. On paper, it's powerful. In reality, it's rotting from within. Noble families feud constantly. Political factions fight for power. The kingdom is unstable. Then disaster arrives from across the Strait of Gibraltar. A Muslim commander named Tariq ibn Ziyad lands with an army from North Africa. His force is relatively small, maybe 12,000 men. The Visigoths should crush them. Instead, everything falls apart. At the Battle of Guadalete, King Roderick marches out to confront the invaders, and then his kingdom betrays him. Rival nobles abandon the fight, some switch sides, others simply disappear. The Visigothic army collapses. King Roderick vanishes, possibly killed, possibly drowned, possibly never identified among the dead. Nobody knows for certain. Within a few years, one of Europe's largest kingdoms is gone. Cities surrender. Fortresses open their gates, entire regions submit without resistance. The speed is almost unbelievable. What took centuries to build disappears in less than a decade. The conquerors called the new territory Al-Andalus. And for many people living there, life continues surprisingly normally. Taxes change, rulers change, but daily existence remains recognizable. Yet far to the north, in the rugged mountains of Asturias, something unexpected is happening. A resistance is beginning, and its first victory will become the stuff of legend. Imagine standing in the mountains of northern Spain. Steep cliffs, dense forests, cold rain, narrow valleys. This is not ideal territory for an empire, and that's exactly why it matters. Here, according to tradition, a nobleman named Pelayo gathers survivors, refugees, warriors, local tribes, people unwilling to accept the new reality. At first they are insignificant, a nuisance, nothing more. Then comes the Battle of Covadonga. The details are wrapped in myth. Christian chronicles transform it into a miraculous victory. Muslim sources barely mention it. But that's the point. Small events can have enormous consequences, because Covadonga creates something more powerful than military success. It creates hope. The idea that resistance is possible. The idea that the conquest is not permanent. The idea that history can be reversed. And ideas are dangerous, especially when they refuse to die. Generation after generation, tiny Christian kingdoms survive in the north. Asturias, Leon, Navarre, Aragon, small territories clinging to existence. They raid south, retreat north, advance, lose ground, advance again. The struggle becomes a rhythm, not one war, thousands of wars. And while these kingdoms are slowly growing, Al-Andalus is becoming one of the richest societies in the world, a development that changes everything. For many people, medieval Europe conjures images of mud, disease, and endless warfare. Meanwhile, in Cordoba, something extraordinary is unfolding. At its height, Cordoba may have been the largest city in Western Europe. Its streets are illuminated, its libraries contain hundreds of thousands of books. Its scholars study medicine, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy. Merchants arrive from across continents. Knowledge flows through the city. Wealth pours in. The Great Mosque rises as one of humanity's architectural masterpieces. Al-Andalus becomes a centre of culture and learning. And for a time it seems unstoppable, especially under one man, Abd al-Rahman III. He transforms Cordoba into the capital of a powerful caliphate, a rival to the greatest states of the age. Christian kingdoms pay tribute. Enemies fear his armies. The balance of power appears settled. The north survives, the south dominates, but empires often look strongest right before they begin breaking apart. And when the Caliphate of Cordoba collapses, everything changes. In 1031, the Caliphate disintegrates. Suddenly, Al-Andalus fractures into dozens of competing states, known as Taifa kingdoms. And this is where the Reconquista truly accelerates, because divided enemies are vulnerable enemies. The Christian rulers recognize the opportunity immediately. Instead of facing one powerful state, they face many. Some Taifa rulers even pay Christian kings for protection. Think about that. Muslim states paying Christian rulers to defend them against other Muslim states. The reality of medieval politics is often far stranger than religious narratives suggest. Power comes first, everything else comes second. One figure embodies this chaos better than anyone. A man who becomes legend. A man remembered as Spain's greatest warrior, El Cid. And his story is far more complicated than most people realize. Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, better known as El Cid. Modern portrayals often turn him into a simple Christian hero. Reality is much messier and much more interesting. El Cid fights for Christian rulers, then Muslim rulers, then himself. He serves kings, gets exiled, builds alliances, breaks alliances, switches sides when necessary. He is a warrior operating in a world where survival matters more than ideology. Eventually, he captures Valencia and rules it almost like a personal kingdom. His reputation grows into myth. Stories become songs. Songs become legends. Legends become national memory. But even as El Cid rises, a new threat is approaching from Africa, a threat far more dangerous than the fractured Taifa kingdoms, because the age of easy victories is about to end. The Taifa rulers are desperate. Christian advances continue, tribute payments increase. Defeat seems inevitable, so they make a fateful decision. They ask for help. Across the sea, powerful Islamic movements are emerging. The Almoravids. Later, the Almohads, religious reformers, fanatical warriors, empire builders, and they arrive with a mission, not just to stop Christian expansion, to reverse it. The newcomers unite much of Muslim Iberia once again. Christian kingdoms suddenly face a far more disciplined enemy. Victories become harder. Defeats become common. The Reconquista appears to stall. Then comes one of the most important battles in medieval history, a battle that could have changed Europe forever. July 1212, Las Navas de Tolosa. The atmosphere is electric. A coalition of Christian kingdoms marches south, Castile, Aragon, Navarre. For once, rivals are united. Facing them stands the Almohad Empire. one of the most powerful forces in the Islamic world. The stakes are enormous. If the Christians lose, centuries of gains may disappear. If they win, the road south opens, the battle begins. Chaos erupts, steel crashes, arrows darken the sky, thousands fight and die. Then the Christian armies break through. The Almohad defences collapse. Panic spreads, the empire's power shatters, and suddenly the future changes. Las Navas isn't the end, but it is the turning point. After this, momentum shifts permanently. The Christian kingdoms are no longer merely surviving, they are conquering, and there is no going back. The 13th century becomes a tidal wave. Christian armies push southward at astonishing speed. Major cities fall: Cordoba, Valencia, Seville. One after another, territories that had been Muslim for centuries now change hands. Mosques become churches, governments are replaced, populations adapt, resist, migrate, or endure. Entire worlds are transformed. Yet one kingdom survives. Granada, protected by mountains, protected by diplomacy, protected by tribute payments. For more than 200 years, Granada remains the last Muslim state in Iberia. A final survivor, a final symbol, a final target, and eventually two rulers emerge who are determined to finish the job. History remembers them as Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic Monarchs. Their marriage changes everything. Castile and Aragon remain legally separate, but together they possess immense power. For the first time, the major Christian kingdoms are moving in the same direction. The rulers understand something crucial. Granada is vulnerable. Internal rivalries divide its leadership. Civil war weakens its defences. The moment has arrived. In 1482, the final campaign begins. It lasts 10 years, 10 brutal years. Sieges, raids, starvation, political intrigue, betrayal. Slowly, relentlessly, Granada is squeezed. Its options disappear, its allies vanish, its fate becomes unavoidable. And then comes the final surrender, the moment that began our story. But the consequences are only beginning. January 1492, the banners of Castile and Aragon rise above Granada. Crowds watch history unfold. Some celebrate, some mourn, some simply wonder what comes next. Boabdil rides away. The last Muslim ruler is gone. The Reconquista is complete. Or at least that's how later generations would remember it. Because reality is more complicated. The war may have ended. But the struggle over identity, religion and power was just beginning. And its consequences would echo far beyond Spain, far beyond Europe, far beyond anything the participants could imagine. 1492 becomes one of the most important years in human history. Granada falls. Then comes another decision. Christopher Columbus receives support for his voyage west. Months later, he reaches the Americas. A global empire begins to emerge. The wealth of continents starts flowing towards Spain. The nation becomes a superpower. But there is another side to the story. Religious uniformity becomes a priority. Jewish communities face expulsion. Many Muslims eventually face conversion pressures, displacement, or exile. The Spanish Inquisition expands. The dream of unity carries a cost, and that cost affects millions. The Reconquista creates winners. It creates losers. It creates legends. And it creates wounds that remain debated centuries later. Its memory becomes political, cultural, religious, national. Everyone wants ownership of the story, because the story helped create the modern world. The Reconquista lasted nearly 8 centuries, longer than most empires survive, longer than entire nations have existed. People were born into it, lived their entire lives within it, died before seeing its end. Generation after generation fought battles they never started and would never finish, and yet somehow the struggle endured. Today, the castles still stand. The mosques and cathedrals still dominate city skylines. The names of kings and warriors still echo through history. The scars remain visible. So do the achievements. The Reconquista wasn't a simple clash of good versus evil. It was a collision of civilizations, a contest for land, faith, power, identity, survival, and memory. And that's why people still argue about it. Because the Reconquista isn't just a story about the past, it's a story about how nations are built, how cultures collide, how history gets remembered, and how sometimes the events that shape the future begin with a handful of survivors hiding in the mountains, refusing to accept that their story is over. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, subscribe for more videos on empires, wars, mysteries, and forgotten civilizations.